Well, you've done some inspections like we talked on the previous show, and maybe some problems came up and you're going to renegotiate. How do you do that? What do you talk about? Renegotiations. It's the real estate show. Welcome to the Real Estate Show. My name's Rick Naples. I am the owner-broker of Zone Realty LLC. You zone your home. Renegotiation. In other words, you've made the offer on a home, the seller's accepted it, but now something's come up. What do? Do you just back out of the offer and say, I don't want the house, forget it? Well, sometimes that could be the issue. But you have to remember, there are a lot of things at stake here. The seller has agreed to take your offer, and you've agreed to pay that amount for the home. But something's come up. Now, sometimes things come up, problems, before you even go through, say, a home inspection process. You know, situations change. Perhaps, you've done another market analysis on the market and you've decided that maybe the home that you're making the offer on is not going to appraise for the dollar amount. Or let's talk about appraisal, since I just mentioned that. Let's say that you've made an offer on a home and you're going to finance the home. This also comes into play if you're going to be a cash buyer too. But let's say, for figurative speaking, you're financing the home. You make the offer on the home, the seller's accepted it, you now have a binding contract between the two parties. And the bank that's going to do the mortgage on the house sends out the bank appraiser. The appraiser looks at, what's sold recently and closed, what's presently on the market, and they look at the comparables, kind of like what your realtor has done, almost exactly what your realtor has done when getting ready to make that offer, right? You've made the offer, and sometimes maybe you've made that offer because you got a little bit involved in what we call a buyer frenzy. In other words, you want this house. I want the house. I'm going to get the house. And you keep offering money, and sometimes you're offering over what the asking price is, and the seller's gone with you because you offered the most money, right? That doesn't necessarily mean the home is going to be worth what you've offered. So now the appraisal comes in, and the appraisal comes in short. In other words, I've offered XYZ for this house, and the bank says it's only worth XYZ. There's a difference. What happens? What do? How do you react? Well, the first thing you do is you talk to your realtor. Sometimes the realtor is able to go back to the appraisal company and give them comparables that help that appraisal be modified to the point of where it makes more sense. Because not all appraisers will agree on the comps that are used, or sometimes they may miss one here or there. But that's not going to happen all the time. In this situation that we've been in the real estate market, there's been a lot of overbuying of homes, and this has caused home prices to rise. And you do get the situation where the home doesn't appraise for the amount that's been offered. So now you're in a renegotiation situation. What do? Well, you need to go back to the seller and you need to say to them, well, here's what I offered. Here's what the house is appraising for. Here's what I can finance. I'm going to re-offer. I'm going to change my offer. I'm going to offer you this amount as opposed to that amount because this amount is the amount I can get to finance the home based on the structure that I'm going to be moving forward with. The seller, on the other hand, could say, oh, no. You offered me XYZ. I want XYZ. It's up to you to make up the difference. And that's happened. If you're a cash buyer and you're buying all cash, sometimes you're buying the home and you really don't care what it appraises for, you just want the home and you're going to overpay for it, hoping that the market will increase, and it usually does over the next few years, and that's going to balance out. But if you're not in the position to buy all cash, you find yourself as a buyer put in that position of, if I'm going to move forward, do I have the ability to make up the difference? And I've seen buyers put down substantial amounts of money on homes, and then because the home didn't appraise, have to change their financial structure around where they hold back some of that money they were going to put down to make up the difference between what was offered and what the house appraised for and what they can finance. That's something you can talk to as far as mortgage officers are concerned with structuring and so on and so forth. Your realtor might be able to give you a little bit of advice, but it's best to go to the people that work with the money on that. I've also seen deals fall apart where a home has appraised far less than what the offer is, and the seller will not meet the difference, and the buyer can't meet the difference, and the deal falls apart. And this is where you now start to have to negotiate on the escrow money. Any realtor, any professional realtor is going to do their due diligence, and they're going to live up to what's called fiduciary responsibilities. They act on behalf of their client, and they're going to protect their client. So if you have the ability when you're making the offer to put a large amount of money down, your realtor is going to tell you, don't give all that money as escrow money or good faith money right up front. You want to make an offer with enough money to entice the seller to accept the offer, but you also don't want to put a lot of money at risk, because you see, if you back out of the deal because it didn't appraise, whatever it might be, that money that you've put up front that the seller has in the escrow account could be at risk. You might get it back, you might not get it back, you might get part of it back instead of all of it back. That becomes a negotiation. In our state, the seller just can't keep the money. You see, any good faith money goes into an escrow account. It's held with the escrow attorney or with the listing agency. And that monies cannot be released until the agreed closing date with the closing price and agreement. If not, there has to be a contractual agreement between the seller and the buyer as to the disposition of that money. And if that monies becomes a negotiation point, sometimes the courts have to get involved and monies can be tied up. Sellers don't like to tie up the money, because if there's money in play and the seller wants to keep the money, they cannot sell the house to someone else unless the buyer agrees to releasing that money to them. If the buyer says, no, I want my money back, and it now gets into a renegotiation or an issue or a concern, everything kind of stands still until an agreement is made. And this is where the attorneys really have to get involved. So your realtor is going to advise you what kind of monies to put up front. They also are looking at the markets as far as what pricing you offered. I mean, if a home has been offered for a certain price level and you've offered over that price level, the realtor is going to be aware of that, and they're going to advise how much good faith money you should put up that might be at risk, just in case the house doesn't appraise, like I talked to earlier. Now let's talk about renegotiation when it comes to items that come in the home inspection report. As I said in an earlier show, sometimes issues come up. The home inspector finds stuff. Radons are too high. The septic system's not working correctly. There's plumbing issues, electrical issues. Usually what happens is you will get estimates on what it would cost to fix those items. And you're going to approach the seller. You're going to say to the seller, well, you know, this is out of date and needs to be updated to code. This is not grounded properly. There's a leak under the sink. There's, you know, whatever the problem may be. And you want to have that fixed or tended to before you close on the house. So this is where the realtors get involved, both the realtor on your side, the buyer side, and the realtor on the seller side. They start to negotiate seller and buyer, as to what to do about that. Sometimes the seller's going to agree to just go ahead and fix it. Sometimes the seller's going to say, well, I don't have the money to fix it. I can't fix it. That's where credits can get involved. The seller may say, I don't have the money to fix this issue. However, at the closing, I will credit back to you XYZ dollars so that you can have that fixed. Basically what they're doing is they're lowering the price on the house. You can right up front say, especially if it's an as-is purchase, that the inspection showed these different items and I really don't want to offer what I offered. I want to offer a little bit lower because it's a lot more repair work than I planned. Let's talk about as-is purchases. I mentioned this on a previous real estate show, and I really think that it's important for me to kind of explain the as-is idea. When a seller puts their home on the market and they're selling it as is, it's exactly what that says. As is, or as is, whereas. You see what you see, you get what you're purchasing. They're not going to fix anything, they're not going to renegotiate on anything. This is it. It becomes really important if you see an as-is sale house that you understand what that as-is means. Now, sometimes as-is is not actually truly as-is. It's just something that the realtor is doing, the listing realtor has listed, where the seller has said, I don't have the money to repair anything, so I want to sell my home as is. You have to be really careful though. As a professional listing agent, when I list a home, when a seller says to me, I want to sell my home as is, I don't want to get involved in renegotiations, I always have to advise the seller that you have to realize that when you put your house on the market, if you say you're marketing your home as is, buyers immediately say it's as is, there's issues. So unless you get an investor that's looking to buy all cash or a buyer who's looking to buy all cash, usually your normal buyer or your regular buyer who's going to finance a home might stay away from it. So you're going to lessen the pool of buyers that may make offers on your home. So a lot of times as a listing agent, I'll say to the seller, let's not list it as is. Let's list it normally. If the buyer does an inspection and there are items they want tended to, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. In other words, we'll see what there is and if anything needs to be negotiated, or we can offer a credit or whatever it might be in order to move the deal going forward. Now let's talk about huge issues. One of the big issues that sometimes come up is when a house is not connected to city water or connected to the city sewer system. In other words, the home has a septic system or it has well water. Septic inspectors are going to come in and do a thorough inspection of the septic system. And the septic system is not just a tank that's buried in the ground that the toilet flushes to. The septic system is a storage tank that collects all of the waste from the home. And this includes, water that comes from your dishwasher, from your toilets, from your sinks, and so on and so forth, that go into the septic system. The way the septic system works, it's usually gravity fed. The water comes in one baffle, goes into the tank, and all of the solids, the waste, eventually settle to the bottom of the tank. The water rises, and the water goes out the outlet into what's called leaching fields. Those leaching fields are basically pipes that run under the backyard or into the woods or wherever it might be, where the water can be dispersed naturally. Now, of course, the tank has to function correctly because the water's got to be able to come in, the soils have got to be able to settle, and the water's got to be able to go out. If the tank gets too full, it's going to break down. This is why regular maintenance is needed with a septic system. It becomes really important in the septic inspection that the seller have the tank pumped out so the inspector can look at the condition of the tank. Let's say there's issues. The septic tank over the years has gotten a crack in it, or one of the baffles isn't working well. Or a lot of times I find that the dispersion box, in other words, that's the tank fills with the water goes out of the tank and it goes into a box that's in another little area. And that's the box that disperses the water down the different pipes in the leaching area. Sometimes those disbursement boxes fill with dirt, or they fill with whatevers. I've had people, install a shed or something in the backyard, and a heavy truck has drove over and crushed the disbursement box. And a lot of times that box has to be replaced. In either case, if there's something wrong with the septic system that has to be repaired, it's never an easy repair. It usually involves digging up something. I've had situations where septic systems have been failed. The inspector has inspected it and said this septic system no longer works properly. It has to be replaced. And you're talking about some serious money to replace a septic system. So it's really important that you understand how it works, what it does, and what those costs may be. Because you may have to go back to the seller and say, well, the leaching systems are full, they have to be redirected, the disbursement box has been crushed, it has to be replaced, the tank has a leak in it, whatever. You may have to replace this septic system in order for us to move forward in purchasing the home. But again, if it's an as-is purchase, you have to be aware of that. Now, let me talk about wells and well water. Well, we all know what a well is. I mean, we're New Englanders, right? You know what a well is. It's a hole in the ground that a pump is dropped into, and it takes groundwater and sucks it up and brings it to the house, right? Well, one of the things that inspectors are going to look at is the recovery rate. In other words, how fast does that well supply water to the home? And does it supply enough water fast enough to meet the home's needs? If you're running the dishwasher and you're flushing the toilet and you're taking a shower and you're washing clothes in the washing machine, that's a lot of water coming into the house being used at the same time. Does the well provide enough water to be able to do that? And not only that, but what's the condition of that water coming into the home? Well inspections not only look at the recovery rates, but they look at how the well functions. First of all, what type of well it is, and there's different types of wells, and what's the quality of that water? Is that water safe enough to drink? Or is it well water that can only be used for washing things? You have to have water coming through another system in order to have potable water to drink. That gets involved. What if it's an old well? Old wells sometimes over time fill with soils. They get clogged. Maybe the pump's not working correctly. Maybe it's not drawing. I've even sold a house that, in the situation, the well went dry. There was no longer water, or the water was contaminated from some environmental issue that happened. And the home had to be connected to the city water system. And that involved, of course, digging up lawns and running pipes and connecting to water systems and so on and so forth. Very expensive endeavor. So again, you have to be open to the possibilities there's problems with septic systems and water systems. Those are inspections that are really important and could cause a huge renegotiation in the deal that may sidewind the deal. There are other inspections that are done. I mentioned on a previous show the radon inspection. Radon, as I said, is an invisible gas that tends to gather in enclosed areas, especially basements. If your basement is a finished basement, you're going to have radon gases gathering. And you can open a window to ventilate, or you may need more serious help. One of the serious helps in a radon system, or getting rid of radon, is what's called a radon mitigation system. In other words, they're going to install a system that sucks the air from the basement and ventilates it out and brings fresh air in. These systems can be very expensive. If there's high radon in a living space in the basement, you're going to want to have a radon mitigation system installed. And again, this becomes something that you could go back to renegotiate. So let's just recap for a moment. Renegotiation means going back to the table. It means you need to go back and talk to the seller because you want to change the offering agreement to accommodate those things that may need to be tended to. Depends on whether it's a straight purchase, a cash purchase, a finance purchase, an as-is purchase. You're going to rely a lot on your realtor to advise you how to move forward and what items you can negotiate on. I would not buy a home unless I'm buying it for the purpose of a total rehab that needs something serious done to it, unless you're prepared to do that thing. I recently sold a home where it had a septic system. The septic system worked just beautifully fine, but this house happened to be near a lake. And when the house was built in the 1940s, the septic system between the house and the lake was fine. The new code required that the septic system be moved away from the lakeside, be put on the other side of the house. So although the septic system was working fine, it wasn't up to code. And the seller still had to renegotiate with the buyer to put a brand new septic system in a different area of the yard in order to meet the present code. So that sometimes is a surprise. That's something that you need to really look at. I sold a house back in my career which had well water, and the well was contaminated. In that particular case, the home had to be hooked up to city water. Again, a big expense that was involved. I had a home that I sold a while back that was oil heat. The oil tank had leaks in it, and the buyer wanted to convert to gas. So they renegotiated with the seller on having the home connected to the gas lines and gas put in the home. And that was, again, a complete renegotiation of the price and moving forward. There was removal of the tank and redoing of the systems and so on and so forth. You have to be prepared to be able to handle anything that may come up when these renegotiation situations come in. Is anything going to destroy your deal? Yes. There are things out there that just does not make it feasible for you to move forward and purchase that particular home. Are there ways to work around it? Are there ways to renegotiate and put the deal together? Yes, there are ways. So when something comes up, as a buyer, don't panic. There might be a way that it can be worked out where you can have that problem solved. You can renegotiate and have something agreed to have that item attended to make it so that when you move into the home, you're moving into a home that doesn't require major work done to it right away. There's also some minor things that you might want to have done. I've had people negotiate on things like perhaps there's water stains on a ceiling somewhere from an old leak. The roof's been replaced, but there's old leaks and never have time to repaint or seal those leaks up. I've had people negotiate on things like replacing the faucets in the kitchen for newer faucets because the faucets are old and have rust on them and so on and so forth. There's been minor things. Usually you go through your inspections, whatever they are, and you make up your list of the things that you want attended to, and you submit it to the seller. The seller then decides, I can fix this, I can't fix this, I'm going to offer a credit, we'll have this done, we'll get it done professionally, I'll get you the receipts, and so on and so forth. That's all part of the renegotiation. So, is it as simple as making an offer on a house and having the offer accepted? Not really. Once the offer is accepted, there's going to be several different opportunities that you may have to renegotiate in order to make the deal make sense for you and for the seller, and for you to get to that closing table, eyes open, knowing what you're buying, so you can move into your home and enjoy living there. My name is Rick Naples, and this has been The Real Estate Show. I thank you very much for watching. Stay tuned for the next show in my series of problems and concerns, and I'll see you next time.
Step into our store and discover a stunning array of dancewear. Introducing Dancingly Yours, your one-stop shop for all things dance and delight for ages 2 to 92. From tiny tutus to energetic tap shoes, our store is a treasure trove of dance essentials. At Dancingly Yours, we offer an extensive collection of dancewear and accessories that cater to all styles and levels. We carry top brands and the latest fashion trends. From ballet to hip-hop, lyrical to jazz, ballroom to liturgical, as well as gymnastics, you'll find the best selection right here at Dancingly Yours. But we're not just a store. We're a community that celebrates the joy of dance. Our expert team is passionate about dance, just like you. So we're here to assist you in finding the perfect fit. And the best part, Dancingly Yours offers competitive pricing in-store and online. Dancingly Yours, easy to get to, and worth the trip from anywhere, right on Route 10 in Plainville.
Like us on Facebook. Search Nutmeg TV.